I get this question all the time. How do you make your chords sound so buttery smooth? It's so pretty when you play guitar. So many of these chord changes just like flow into one another. Well, today I'm going to give away my secrets. So basically, there's just two things that I'm doing. Namely, the most important one is voice leading. And then the other thing is a little added bonus called inversions, chord inversions to be precise. So if you're new here, my name is Luan. I'm a professional musician. I graduated from Berkeley with a scholarship, and we have a free online music school where I give away practical music education for free. This is part of our theory course, so let's just jump right into it and start learning some really, really cool chord tricks. Now, before we get into voice leading, which is pretty much the most important part of this lesson, I do want to briefly skim over inversions because for some reason, I don't know, my teachers used to make it really confusing for me. I'm going to try and like simplify it as much as I can for you guys with a really easy example. Inversion is just simply rearranging a chord. So if a chord goes root, third, fifth, which you guys should know from doing the basic theory that we've already gone over a few times. And if you are new and you don't know any of that stuff, I will pin this lesson in the comments. Just go there and you can see all the previous lessons. It's all free. Have fun. And I'll make this a lot easier for you to understand. Now, say a chord is a root, third, fifth, and typically the root note is usually the bass note. It usually happens, look, G chord, root note's there, C chord, root note's there, D chord. So that's how a normal chord is typically played. Now, all we're going to do when it comes to inversions, we're going to take one of the other notes, either the third or the fifth, and we're going to throw that on the bass note. It does not become a root note. The chord itself does not change. The only thing that changes is the starting note of the chord. So, for instance, if you start on a third, it becomes a first inversion. If you start on a fifth, it becomes a second inversion. And then say, for instance, you're playing 7 chords, the seventh, if you start on that one, becomes a third inversion, and so forth, whatever. Now, what we're going to do here is on the D chord, I'm going to play you a first inversion D chord. So what I'm going to do is I've got my root, fifth, root, third. So for first inversion, we want to turn the third into the bass note. So this one's a really easy one to straight away do, and it will give you the clearest example. So I'm going to grab that note right there, which is the 2nd fret on the high E string, and then I'm just going to throw it over here, 2nd fret on the low E string. Can you hear that difference now? So that's a first inversion D chord. You can do this with any chord that you want, absolutely any chord that you want. And I'm not going to sit here and go through every single chord because it would take forever, but that's the whole concept. There's nothing magical happening. You're just swapping a chord tone and then you're throwing it up onto the bass note, and then you're just either calling first, second, or third inversion, typically. Now, the reason why we want to be familiar with how inversions work is they're going to help us get like really nice step movements in the bass progression to make it sound really, really cool. So this first inversion D chord, I'll give you a really, really great example. I mean, you see it in heaps of country music, but this was a famous song by Lady Gaga and B-Rad Cooper. We love B-Rad Cooper. And so he's going to go like this. So he just went E minor, D, G, C, G, D, E minor. Now, if you were just to Google how to play it and it was like E minor, D, G, it does not go like this. See how yuck that sounds? Sounds so bad. Like the worst. No, it's not the worst. But you can see how clean it sounds when we add the inversion. And this bass note is now moving 1. And that's all we're doing with inversions. That's the reason why we want to know inversions, and they are so awesome, and they're absolutely an amazing little tool to add to your tool belt. I wouldn't be throwing inversions everywhere. They need to have a reason to be used. So if you're walking down progressions or you want to create bass passing tones, that's where they're just like, mwah, mwah. This just sounds so good. So think about it more towards the bass of like the bass notes in a chord progression, and that's the reason why we'd typically be using inversions. But you know, at any other time, like say for instance, I'm playing a C chord. I'm going to use I'm going to play like a D chord here, but I'm using the C shape in case you've gone through our cage system. But say for instance, I'm playing a C chord here and I just want to play these 3 notes. That's technically a first inversion C chord because my bass note is here. So you can call it whatever you want to call it, but that's technically all an inversion is. All right, so hopefully that's really cool. Now, we briefly glanced on it, but you could see the bass movement was happening there with this. Now, the most important thing that it comes to making your progression sound really, really good is called voice leading. And voice leading is not a scary concept. It's simply finding common tones, like common notes, that exist in a chord progression, and you milk them. And you want them to connect with as many chords as possible. Now, typically in voice leading, the notes of the chords aren't going to move more than a tone. So like a whole step on the guitar. So I'll just give you an example what that means. So say, for instance, we're playing this, you know, banger of a tune. Now, right there, I did E minor, which I don't really care about that. But when we go from the D to the G, did you notice there was a lot? It sounded like the same chord, but it was different. And so that's what voice leading does. This is what creates this really smooth and this like super connected chord progression. So what's happening here is I play that D chord. Now I'm going to keep this note here as a common tone for the G. So that's staying there on the B string. So that's nothing's changing there. Now from this note on the G string is dropping down a tone. So it's staying within our little tone, max 1 tone range on voice leading. And now the next one here, the D, that just stays there. It's not changing at all. So that's another one of those notes that's staying there. And then we've got, if you decided to play that, it's only going up a tone, the A string. And then on the G string, we're going up a half step. So that's fitting within that 1 tone range. So now you can hear how there's not much change happening in the chord change. It's very, very simple, very, very subtle, and that's what makes it sound so connected and so smooth. What would sound not connected and not smooth is me going. You see how we're like moving from here all the way down, like over a tone for pretty much everything. And that's just like, that sounds garbage. I mean, it works for different kinds of genres, you know, say you're playing punk rock or whatever. Or whatever, I don't know, whatever you'll be doing that could do that. There's plenty of songs that I do that exact same thing. But the voice leading element, that prettiness, that's all that's happening there. And you can see how those notes are common. And that's all voice leading is. And the reason why open chords are so, they're just like universally awesome is, and there's a sound to open chords, is because pretty much when you know all the diatonic chords within like an open chord progression, which you guys should know, understanding the G shape and the C shape, kind of moving through everything, all those chords are going to be doing natural voice leading. There's going to be natural common tones that are going to be reoccurring between all the different chords. And this step motion is going to exist in a lot of them. And it's like easy mode. You don't have to be clever to do this. Piano players have to think about this a lot. And that's why they're very good at, like, if you see a great piano player, they can do it really, really well. But on guitar, a lot of guitarists will step into the zone of bar chords, and once they get into bar chord land, they're like, sweet ass, man. And now they're moving blockwise, and it just doesn't sound really clean, unless that's the sound you're going for. If you're just guessing, like if you're just limited by knowledge, then it's obviously not going to sound great. And so that's why we want to be aware of what's going on with voice leading. And so it's a super, super amazing, powerful skill to start working on, just to start thinking about when you're playing chord progressions. Now, if you pair this with the cage system, which is further on in the practical theory course, if you've already gone through our guitar course, which is also free, go and check it out. It's good fun. All the cage system elements are going to be bringing in open chords that you might already know, and you can get all of these like really nice voice-led lines that you normally would be doing in the normal chord progression. You can transplant them into like bar chords. And so if you understand the cage system, you can start doing very clever things. Now, I'm going to go one step further. This is not something that anyone, like if you're just consuming this video and you only have basic knowledge of music theory, don't feel bad. You don't need to understand what's about to happen. But what I'm going to show you is the levels that it can go, that it can start sounding really, really cool. And this is exactly what people hear in my playing. They're like, oh my God, how did you do that? Like, what chord are you playing? It's not the chord that I'm playing. It's the way I'm playing the chords to fit within one another. And when I discovered this, it was just like, oh my God, I should be doing this all the time. And then I did it all the time, and then you just sound the same all the time because you're doing it. So when you're doing this technique, do it where it works, and you don't have to do it all the time. You just do it where it works, and if the song leans towards it, then you do it. So say, for instance, I was going to play like a 2-5-1 in jazz. So normally a basic guitar, I mean, when I say a basic guitarist, I literally got into Berklee playing like this, straight up. I got accepted to Berklee, and I was doing this exact thing. And the reason why I tell you this is on my third semester, so I was second year Berklee student, I got pulled up on this by another professor, a guitar, what's his name? Something Itzler. I don't know. He's awesome. He really, really great. Blew my mind. He was like one of the best jazz professors I could have ever had. Anyway, he pulled me up on it. And he's like, bro, you are never playing another chord like that in our jam like that ever again, in our ensemble. And I was like, okay, I will never do that again. So basically how I used to approach it is like, say I have a 2-5-1, which is going to be, I do it in the key of C, which would be D minor, G, C. So I'd be going, which is fine. And like, you can get through like many interactions with other musicians by playing like that. No problem. But if you want to make it voice-led, if you start understanding where tensions are and start pushing yourself, this is super bonus, by the way. This is a really, really fun thing. Now you'll know exactly how I use voice leading. So say, for instance, I'm gonna now look for common tones. So say, for instance, I'll just pick a chord, for instance. I'd pick C major 7 here, which I'm going to play. Now I'm like, okay, what can I do to connect as many things around this chord as possible? So for instance, here, I would go for my 2 chord. Instead of going up here, I'd be like, well, where are all my notes here that I can play my 2 chord? So I would go, okay, well, D is right here. So I'm going to like think about my, my C shape for my D. And so I've got my root notes here, okay, flat 3, and then I want a 7, so my root note, oh yep, there's my flat 7, boom. And then from here, I could, if I wanted to, just add my 9, bam. And now I've got a 2 minor 9. And then from here, because I need to go 2 chord, now I need to go to my G chord. And what's within my G chord? If I play a G13, if I move this down 1/2 step and I keep this one here, I can just go and I keep this one, my first finger that's on the D string, like that. I just keep that there. It turns into a G13. And then from here, all I'm doing is moving my first finger up and bringing my third finger down on the D string. And now I've got my C major 7. So I just went from... So you can see these 2 stay. This one goes down 1/2 step and the root note changes. So that moved. And now from here, this one's going to go up, but these 2 are going to stay. Now, you can see how that is really, really nice voice leading. And now if I play it, oh, sounds so smooth, right? Really, really pretty. Versus that sounds basic. So they all have their own place. You can sound basic sometimes, and it's nice to drop in like, you know, a nice little chord like that every now and then. But this is what I'm doing. And this is what a lot of people see in my playing, and they're like, oh man, I really like that. And that's all that's happening right there. I'm just voice leading these top lines, and then they are, or just I'm just finding these connections between these chords, and it's working. And, you know, this is not something that you're going to look at and be like, oh, I've got this. Obviously, I explained it quite quickly, but when I was learning it, it would be like, you know, once I found one connection, like just try and find a connection between just two chords. And then once you find those connections, you're like, all right, cool. I know that anytime I play a C major 7, you know, I could go here to a sharp diminished, or a C major 7, and then I got my 2 chord here, C major 7, and I got my 5 chord here. So I've built these connections between the different chords over time. And if you just do one every now and then, you know, you'll build up this bank. And then within like 3 or 4 years, you're just going to be able to like whip out these really, really nice voice-led lines when required, or when you just want to be like, I'm going to drop this here. You could do it as like a little feature in a song, and it creates like a nice little like a little moment in the harmony that you haven't heard throughout the song. So you could be basic the whole way. And then over like some pre-chorus melodies, and then you know, like you could do that if you want to. But that is essentially all voice leading is. So hopefully that gives you enough information. And if you enjoyed the bonus section, let me know. But I love sharing what I like to do, and a lot of it is quite complex. Once you like, as soon as you start going down the rabbit hole, and then you see what I do, and you're like, oh my god, like that's a lot to know. I need to know all my tensions. And you're like, yeah, you do. Sidebar, you got time, because like this is over like 10-15 years that I learned a lot of this stuff. Like when I was at Berkeley, my god, that was like, we're talking like, that was like 7 or 8 years ago that I had that aha moment. So now I've had another like, you know, 7 years of messing with it, and now I'm getting even better, and I'm going to continue to get better. You'll come back and see me in 3 years, and I'll be like ripping all this fancy ass stuff, and you'll be like, oh my god. Or I'll still be doing the same thing. You just never know. But don't feel bad that you don't get this right away, and don't feel bad that you don't have like a million chords that you can connect. Just understanding that they can be connected is a massive leg up, because so many people just don't take the time to understand what's actually being played. They're just going to look at chord shapes, play the chord shapes, and they have no clue what's going on underneath the hood. Now, the next sections of the course, I'm going to be jumping into like chord tensions and things like that. So hopefully that will give you, this was just like a teaser for what you'll learn in the future. So hopefully that helps, and I will catch y'all in the next video.